this is the fun that we get to have all together when we put our minds together. And it's been really great to plan this. So without further ado, we have Rhonda, Soling, and Vivette who will be sharing with us today. And we also are going to have lots of space and time at the end for questions, for further conversation. We hope that this is a place where we can kind of come with our open hearts and open minds and really start to maybe shift our perspective or learn something new and know that it's okay to be in that kind of learning beginner mode. So Nicole, do you have anything else you want to add before I pass it over to Rhonda?
No, thank you everyone for attending today. And Rhonda, I like your feather and your hair.
Oh, great. And here's Vivette. I see just joining.
Okay.
Great. So
And
Rhonda, you can pick it up.
Okay, and I think I shared my screen, did I? Can you see it on your end? Okay, the medicine wheel. So again, my name is Rhonda. I'm a clinician for Nonotuck, and my focus is going to be on the love loss across the cultures. Focus on the American Indians, and I can only speak because each tribe has
It's
it's like a
smoking,
different.
right?
Yep. Each tribe is like a different nation, like America, Spain, France. They all have their different cultures, different ceremonies. So I can only speak on the relationships I have established with different tribes and also my tribe. As you can see, we have the medicine wheel, and the medicine wheel represents different things. It represents the spring, summer, winter, fall. It represents the four directions of the north, east, south, and west. It also represents the elements of nature, of fire, air, water, and earth. Also represents the human race of the red, white, yellow, and black. And also the important part is the four stages of life of the birth, the youth, adults, and the elders. With the I know I probably speak a lot of fast, but with the birth stages, I know everybody's all excited about the gender reveal, but as a native, we always believe that the baby, the unborn child, is a female. So when we speak to that mother or speak directly to that unborn baby, we always refer to a her, a she, because we are a matriarch society, and it's a high respect with women and this society of how women runs of our nations. In that, when children are being born or babies are being born, they have a coming out ceremony where regalias are being made. Regalias are probably made by their grandparents, their aunties, uncles, and so when they have their ceremonies, might be a powwow, they bring their child out fully dressed with their new regalia, and that's always a great thing. And because at one time there was a big ban on speaking about native things, a lot of the culture was being lost because we speak oral history and we don't really write things down, we just speak it out. And so when there's ban on that, a lot of the tradition was being lost because of that. At one time, having a baby was not a happy situation. At one time, because of the new taxes that was taking place on the Cape Cod, natives could not pay for their taxes, so they would give their children up to high society in Boston to work in their homes to pay off their taxes. And also, only 60 years ago, you had the boarding school. So when children being born, the government would realize that. And when it was a come to age of school age, they will remove the children and put them in a boarding school. So now we're learning how to heal from those trauma and be more happy and not fearful. When it came to ceremonies of burials, we will wear something like what I would have on. I have eagle feathers, my ribbon skirt. I would braid my hair and take the time to do that because it is going to a ceremony. we will have, and I'm speaking on my husband's tribe, in the Massawampanoag tribe. They have their own burial site that's in Mashpee. So if you ever go by, go to the cave and go to Mashpee on Highway 28, they have their burial sites right there. And you will see, if you ever go to one of their ceremonies, a person is wrapped in a blanket, and a person from their tribe is blessing them, washing their body, putting their traditional regalia on. And if I can show you this picture right here, are you able to see that?
We only see the wheel, Rhonda.
Are you able to see the picture of the burial?
Just the wheel, the first picture you
Okay, the
showed.
wheel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I might have to stop and then stop sharing and then reshare.
Okay. Stop sharing. I want to show you this amazing. I can't believe I have a picture of that. And then oh, here it goes, share. All right, are you able to see that piece?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a very a unique situation that was a true honor for me to witness this. This is the death of the chief, the recent chief that passed away. As you can see, if you can see his feet at the very end, it's wrapped in a blanket. And instead of using flowers, they're using cedar branches or pieces of the branches of the cedar tree, and they use their left hand to put that. I know if you go to a more of a Christian ceremony or a funeral, they might put a rose or a flower, but in this tribe, they will use these cedar branches on the body. And at the very end, you can see the chief's headdress, and that whole piece, he is on a cedar pole, and then he's placed down. And this is all taking place in Mashpee. And when you're thinking about what else takes place, there's also a fire. So once somebody dies, the family or representative of the family will host a fire, and that fire burns from day one to the time that person is being buried, and that can take days. So somebody is there watching. They call it the fire keeper. So somebody's watching that fire 24/7, watching that fire, making sure that fire is not burning out. And that takes a lot of energy. And now you got a new generation coming upon, and then we're educating them how to do that. And I mean, that can be a little tough to get somebody to stay at the fire overnight, non-sleep, to keep that fire going. Another thing that happens also, natives will cut their hair if a close relative has passed, because we believe that our power is in our hair. And so that's one of the honors of showing that you have honor for that person who passed away. So a hair has been cut off. Another off of things is what happens, of going, like if you had to travel to go to a ceremony. I noticed that it's sometimes best for me to drive, even though how it might take 12 hours to get to where I got to go, because if I had to go to I have done this before, where you had to go to an airport and they're looking at your feathers, where these eagle feathers is a felony for anybody to have eagle feathers, and you have to have a permit. So I had to carry my permit everywhere I go to wear these eagle feathers, because it is a felony. And having regalias, not things like that is a traditional wearing, and a lot of the people just don't understand at the airport of why you have these things on you. That's about it. When it comes to again with the expenses and things like that, I think that when you compare it to the society of the American side, of the Christian side, how expensive it is to go through the rituals of a funeral. And I noticed on the eastern to northeast of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe that they go very traditional. There's no chemicals used. It's all natural, and it's a very a unique experience, especially coming from my tribe, who they bury their individuals in a tribal ceremony, tribal graveyard, but seeing a tribal ceremonies taking place as the Mashpee Wampanoags continue to do that is very unique. And I just want to go back one more time before we go to our next speaker. Well, probably can't. All right. Are you seeing that medicine wheel again?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to show you this particular medicine wheel because it shows an individual of really a female with that medicine wheel on her back. And what that represents is, again, the matriarch society, being the female who pretty much has the power in the tribe, and how it is up to, we look at our women to heal our tribe. And so that takes the whole, almost a whole world on her back. And if you think about how that would feel on a Native woman to have the world on her shoulders to heal her nation, that can be a stressful life, especially trying to work a 9 to 5 and plus trying to do your ceremonies. But that is a true representation of a traditionalist Native woman. All right. Well, that's all I have to share.
Thanks, Rhonda. I have so many questions, so we'll just keep going through our speakers and then we can save questions to the end, because I'm sure there's going to be themes and things like that. So thank you so much. That was so wonderful. Ling, do you want to go next?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ling. I'm the VP of the Northeast AFC here. So primarily what I'm going to be talking about is the Cambodian funeral services and ritual specifically. So Cambodia is heavily, influenced by the Buddhist beliefs and practices. So a majority of our population practice Buddhism. So the key points that I will be discussing here are, ties back to the Buddhist beliefs. Okay, so the ritual and the funeral, typically when somebody passes away, similarly to like other religion where we have to prepare the body, obviously clean the body, bathe and dress, and typically in like white color before we put the body in the casket, and that's like pre-funeral ritual, right? Where we invite the monks to come in and they do like their chant and prayers for the deceased and their family. And that's just the preparation for the next life, which, in Buddhism, we believe in the afterlife and reincarnation, right? So for the funeral ceremony, typically there's a wake, the very first day, where it can ranges from, 3 days or 7 days. So that's really depending on, the family practices, and also, the financial, I guess, would come into play, because, the longer you host the ceremony, the more it costs for the families, right? So typically the wake would, last between 3 to 7 days, where, the family and the community members pay their respects, similarly to how we do it here, where they come and, offer their prayer and their respect to the deceased spirit, essentially. And The next thing they would do is set up like the altar. The altar is basically where they put like a portrait of the deceased member, and then they decorate it with incense, candles, flowers, and other offerings such as food, drinks, and personal items that perhaps the person used to love, used to carry around, things like that. Okay, and the third thing would be we call it a merit making. Essentially, the family performs like good deeds by making donations to the monk, right, on behalf of the deceased family member. That way, we believe that it would help the journey into the next life, I guess, favorable into becoming, hopefully, a human again, because in Buddhists believe reincarnation, you can reincarnate into different living things, right? It doesn't have to be just a human again, essentially. Okay. So the next thing that after the funeral ceremony, there's a cremation. Typically, in the Buddhist culture, we cremate the body. However, there are instances where there are ties with different culture or influenced by Chinese culture where they don't cremate the body, they bury the body, similarly to a lot of folks here in America, right? But for the most part, we do cremate the body. So for a cremation, the process, how it works is that we typically bring the body to the cremation site, and it's typically accompanied by the monks, the family, and friends, like close family and friends. They would kind of walk along and making sure that they are there for the deceased member, essentially, right? And that can also include like traditional music that they play along when they do that, and also chanting from the monks. Okay. For the ceremony itself, cremation ceremony, so at the site, there will be more like prayers and chants are conducted, and typically the eldest son or the close male relative in the family would be the one who lights the fires. And after the cremation, the ashes are usually collected and they can be kept in like a stupa or like a small shrine. And sometimes, depending on the wish of the deceased member, ashes can be spread, at different places, typically in a river or, a meaningful location that perhaps they used to like to go, so that's really depending on the will of the deceased member, and also the family member get to decide. So a stupa sometimes can be built, in a family's land, or if they don't have enough money to build one, they can actually bring it to the temple, like a local temple, where they can just put it there, and they can always kind of go back and visit the shrine. And typically, if you don't have, again, enough money to build one on your own or your family member, that can be shared with other members in the community, right? So you wouldn't have to pay money for that. So that's cremation. And then there's a post-funeral rituals. Like I said earlier, some of the celebrations can take place between 3 to 7 days, but typically a lot of folks choose to do like 3 days, and then sorry, heard something. So the 3 days and then the 7 days, but most people just do it for 1 or 2 days, and then they do it again on the 7th day, like a smaller ritual. And then there's a 100-day ceremony where, again, similarly to what they initially do during the first ceremony, but smaller, where they can invite the monks to come in to their home, do some blessing, or go to the temple and like do like food offering to the temple for the monks, and again receive prayers in return, right? So, and then there's an annual memorial, essentially, where again people in the family, friends, close friends can host this memorial at home, or again go to the temple and offer good deeds to the monk, and in return, the monks would bless families and friends. So a lot of these rituals and ceremonies are essentially there to like kind of help Cambodian families and community like navigate through their process of like grieving, right, and honor their loved ones who passed, and hopefully ensure the transition in the afterlife, into a positive rebirth, the cycle of rebirth. So it's very important that a lot of our Cambodian communities, follow this traditions, and continue the process of providing as much I guess blessings from the monks as possible, because at the end of the day, the monks are the one who kind of help us guide through the spirit in the afterlife, right? Another important thing that I want to mention is that community involvement is very important. So for folks who are, not very fortunate with their financial circumstances, a lot of time, if a member in the family pass away, people in the villages kind of, come in, help donate the money to, celebrate and host the funeral services. So, and if you can't, pay for the services, you can also, go to the temple and ask the monk permission to kind of have the ritual and services at the temple itself. You don't have to do it at home, but a lot of people prefer to do it at home, and then maybe on the 100 days or an annual, that's where they kind of go home and ask the monks for blessing. So community support is very important, especially in the times where someone passed away. So just wanted to mention that. So, and these are, these practices are basically, again, to prepare the deceased member for their afterlife, and for reincarnation. So whatever they kind of do for them is to help them seek a better life in the next cycle of life. So that's just a brief, explanation of like a typical Cambodian funeral services would look like. But if I were to talk about the traditions and cultures that involves with love and loss, there's just too much information to fit into our presentation today. But I can certainly share more if anybody would want to learn more. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ling. And again, I have lots of questions, and we want to make sure we fit in Vivette, and then we'll kind of open this up to a larger discussion so we can all kind of talk together and ask questions and think about how this kind of impacts our lives and our work on a larger scale. Vivette.
Yeah, thank you.
There
Good
you
morning,
are.
everybody. Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm from Bamileke in West Cameroon, and this is the dress that the queen and princesses wear with the hat, and then this is the hat that female and men can wear, and we use that mostly during the ceremony of. So in Bamileke, Cameroon, as in many cultures, mourning and grief are deeply, significantly, and culturally specific. So traditional practice might include communal gathering, ritual, and ceremony that honor the deceased and support the bereaved. So in that, Elders play a crucial role in guiding the mourning process, providing wisdom and ensuring that traditional practices are adhered to processes that reflect deep respect for the deceased and support for the bereaved. So the custom may vary among the Bamileke community, but several common practices include the wake keeping. During the wake keeping, the family of the deceased traditionally hold a wake or vigil, which can last for several days. During this time, family and community members gather to pay their respect, offer condolences, and share stories about the deceased. The funeral often involve elaborate ceremony that includes traditional music, dancing, and ritual. This rite may be intended to honor the deceased and ensure the smooth transition to the afterlife. The cultural ritual, specific rituals such as sacrifice or offering might be performed to appease ancestors and seek their guidance or blessing. These practices are deeply embedded in the community's spiritual belief. Now, the extended family play a role, and the role that they play is supporting the grieving family. This can include financial assistance, participation in ritual, and helping with funeral arrangement. So the grief period, the mourning period may extend beyond the funeral, with specific custom and behavior expected of the bereaved family, such as wearing mourning clothes or refraining from certain activity. Overall, the Bamileke culture, and we also call Bamileke, or we also call ourselves the Jew of Africa. And so the overall, the custom include the spiritual, social, and cultural dimension. So now, there's some specificity, and it would take, when I was approached to talk about this, there's so much to talk about, but I just want to go to some, I just present a succinct way that the thing is, but now, depending on the person, the role that the person was playing in the community, the ceremony will be different. So, but we know that the dead are not dead. And when one member of a family dead, during the ceremony, they have to choose somebody who is going to play the role that that person was playing before. So, for example, if there was a mother who passed away and she has kids, among the kids, they're going to choose one of the child who probably have the same behavior and more appeal like the mother, so they can continue playing the role on top of the role that they have in their own personal life. They have to play the role of the mother to keep on gathering all the other kids so they don't feel lost and give advice. And if there's a problem, and everybody recognize them as the mother, even though the mother is gone. So now in the ritual, when you are king, your ceremony is different from those of a common person. A king, they bury him without you knowing, but they just do a ceremony and bury like an empty coffin. You don't even know where he was buried, and just present an empty coffin that they put in ground for the public to see. Or if you're member of the nine, also they don't see you when you bury. If you're a queen, sometimes depending on the role that you have in the community, they don't see you when you get buried. But at the end, every compound has a traditional houses where after a certain time under the ground, they will go and dig up the ground and take your skull and put in the house. And that's where I usually say it's bad when somebody else write your story, because when the European come to Africa and they saw that, they say, oh, they are cannibalists. They collect the skull as trophy, but which was not the fact. And we put them in the house of the ancestor. And if you're me, for example, live far away. So when I go back home, I can do ritual if I choose to, but I'm choose a more Christian value. So I don't focus so much on the tradition, but my sibling, they do on my name, but they put salt and palm oil to appease the ancestor and ask them for guidance and stuff. And then during the funeral, that they can do the burial and do like a little they call it collation in French, just like they share food and people come after the burial, they share food and stuff. And when people leave, and they can wait for like many months to gather a lot of money and make like a big ceremony where they invite friends from everywhere, and kids who were not able to attend the burial can come to the ceremony of funeral, and there'll be drumming, dancing. And yeah, there's so much to say, but I think I'm going to stop here so you can have the opportunity to ask questions. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers. So before we open it up for questions and further conversation, just to give our group a little bit more context of kind of where this conversation came from. As I mentioned, it really came from our grievery conversations in our DEI and B committee wanting to dig in to the connection between the talks that we were doing about grief and our work that we do at Nonotuck and diversity, because we saw such a clear connection there, and people really wanting to understand more about how different cultures approach not only death, but different thresholds throughout life, where in some cultures there is more ritual and tradition around these different thresholds and changes that we go through. So today we were talking about end of life, but there's lots of different points in our lives where some cultures have ways of honoring those points of life that feel really meaningful, and some of us in our conversations we're finding that our own cultures don't have certain traditions or certain ways of honoring the changes throughout life everywhere, from, as Rhonda kind of showed that beautiful medicine wheel, all the way from life to becoming a parent to retirement, and all the way to end of life, and these different changes and thresholds that we go through in life. And so I really want to thank the speakers for continuing this conversation and focusing so beautifully on the way that their cultures approach end of life. And I would love to kind of start with a question to kind of get everybody warmed up, and then we'll open it up the floor. But I'm curious, Rhonda, you kind of shared that beautiful picture of the woman holding the medicine wheel, the world's on her back, and you mentioned that it's difficult now with somebody might have a 9-to-5, and then they're also still expected to kind of be the keeper of those rituals and those traditions in their lives. And through our conversations that we were having, we really found that many of us feel like a lot of these traditions, even if we have them, have been lost because of this kind of way of living that doesn't slow down enough for tradition. And so I'm wondering if you could just speak to that a little bit more, and what you've seen or what you've experienced in your own life of that kind of balance between really wanting to, or even being expected to, connect to these rituals and these traditions while also juggling a modern life.
Oh, I mean, it's definitely difficult. I was raised as a traditionalist. My mother was a leader. My sister, tribal politics. My brother's and I'm married into tribal politics. So we do have these ceremonies mainly on the weekends, sometimes on the weekdays, and sometimes it's out of state and you're traveling, and you have to be back Monday. And thank God there's a wellness hour that helps out. But I mean, it's very, very difficult to walk two worlds, this traditional way of living, and then the modern way that we are supposed to live. And so yeah, it's very difficult. And then our young ones are watching us, how we are reacting to the stress. So we're trying to make it positive, but they see it in our eyes. They probably see my sister, my siblings, they have children. My husband has children, so they see the stress among us, but they also have to understand the importance of it, because everybody is not walking this path. There's 1.7% of the population that still survives as Native people, and out at 1.7, let's divide that a couple more times and see who's the traditional ones, who's fighting the fight and healing. And I major in social work as a psychotherapist because of that. It wasn't because me. It was I'm always thinking, how am I going to survive? How am I going to help my nation, and not only my nation, but all nations of Native people? And it can be a little stressful.
Oh, Nicole, yes.
I just want to piggyback off like scheduling and things like that. So between the three speakers, have you guys noticed how like the older generation and the newer generation are dealing with grief and ceremonies? And if so, is there a difference, and what would that be?
I can start. Yeah, to reflect on that, I'm thinking that now you see, back then it felt like this time was going slower, and you see how people can make time to really go and mourn and 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 give a decent funeral or burial to the deceased. But time we're living in a really fast pace, like the minute, boom, boom, boom. I have many people who die in my family. I didn't even have the time to mourn because it's like one thing after, and I'm not there to be part of whatever happened. So I'm feeling as at a loss. And I'm like, okay, when I take my chance to go, I'm going to go and play catch up. I have to go to all the tomb, and then maybe if it happened that I get there when they're doing the ceremony, maybe of retrieving somebody's call, then I can be part of it. But at the end of the day, I will go to the main house of the family and then kind of do the ritual. But those to the generation of my mother, they've been able to make the time to go. Like every weekend, if somebody died, everybody travel to go in the village, wherever you are. Those who are in Europe, like I haven't had the opportunity. I'll take, for example, my cousin in Switzerland. Whatever happens, she goes. She has the time. She has the money. So she's always there. Like if she's just waiting for it. But me, it's a struggle. I'm working. I can barely pay my bills, but these things are happening. Sometimes I send my contribution. Sometimes I cannot do. But the challenge here is that when somebody dies, we have like community, like they say people have to do life insurance and whatever for the backup, but some people cannot even afford to pay the life insurance after everything is put in place. So they do like GoFundMe, or they do like I don't know, the volunteer donation in a group community, like WhatsApp community, and people put the money, and if maybe somebody die here, they will help the person to take their body back home. I'm speaking only for the Bamileke, so I don't know for the other people. So that's the challenge. Before we think that there were time, but now I don't know where time is going. If somebody can help me figure that part out, but it's just like quick, quick, quick. And then you wake up, it's like, oh, I cannot do it. Then say, oh, you coming? No, I cannot come. How come? Yes, 4 years you have not been home. Yeah, there's reality here that I'm dealing with. So the older generation have the implication deeply. The newer generation, with the fast pace of life and the struggle, we contribute the best we can. And sometimes we do. Thank us to WhatsApp. You can do the video if you have the time, if not at the work or when the ceremony is taking place, they can make you see some of the synapses of what is going on, and you feel like you're part of it. So that's my response to that. Yeah.
I think
I hope
with the tribal situation, like my grandmother, it's almost like a compound. So all my family's it's over there. It was always a hush hush, don't say anything. We got to survive. What are you talking about? So I was always, I think, the black sheep of the family, going to my grandparents' house, ready to listen to some good oral history and things like that. But it was always a hush hush because it was survival. They didn't have time to be doing ceremonies or saying I love you or how you feeling. And so it was always a quiet thing. You saw it, but you didn't talk about too much of it. You just you know, just go through the motions. And then this, my mother's generation allow us to look more into it and allow us to present it more than what she did and how she was raised. And then you go to another tribe, and it can be totally different. They still speaking languages, and it was all because of where you're hidden and where you can hide to be able to survive throughout the process. So you know, each tribe is different, but definitely on the East Coast, if anybody is saving culture, is a very unique situation on the East, because it's so busy, you know, with on the East versus the Middle East. Very unique. Even with our feathers. I mean, another thing, you know, we believe that when we pray, we wear our ceremony feathers because we believe that when we pray to our feathers, they're the highest animal that can reach to God. So that's, you know, and going through rituals, going through airports, and we don't believe in people touching our hair, because we feel like if you got bad spirit, you put bad spirit in on us. So going through airports, and people loves to, if you're wearing something on your hair, they want to touch it and make sure it's, so it's you know, sometimes I say it's better than just the drive than it is to fly. But I
So for me, I find it that obviously I've never had to experience it myself personally, in terms of you know, setting up the ritual or ceremonies. However, my dad, who, you know, lost my grandma, passed away a while back, probably in 2013 or so, where, you know, he basically was an appointed person to do everything. He was the oldest, you know, in the family. So every responsibility were basically, you know, given to him. And, you know, he did a very good job setting everything up. But that's because, you know, in our culture, when somebody passed away, any workplaces really give a lot of, you know, time and value to the family members, to make sure that they have the time to kind of grieve properly. And like I was explaining earlier, you know, the grief process, I guess, doesn't really end, right? There's since the day that the member passed away, all the way to, like, you know, we have different set dates, you know, the 7 days, the 100 days, the annual, and it continues, right? So perhaps some people might still find grieving is part of their life when, you know, a family member pass away, and it's going to continue that way, for majority of the people, and for in terms of, you know, the differences, I can kind of compare it to how we kind of celebrate it here, whereas we celebrate in Cambodia. Like you said earlier, everything here is about, you know, having a set schedule, right? Because we do have to go back to work. So a lot of times, even, you know, um, family members try to like pick days that are, you know, good for, and that would work for a majority of the family members, right? Whether it's on a weekend or whatever day that you know, they came up with, but that's all tied back to like their work schedule. So it's going to be different how they kind of celebrate here. It could be a lot shorter, right? Quicker. The time of grief will be different depending on where you are located and the situation that you are in. But if you were to do it in Cambodia specifically, you might find yourself a little bit more time to grieve and to, you know, do all the preparation, finish up, you know, the process, when someone passed away. So there could be a different, right? And younger generation might not. I don't want to say the word don't want to care too much, but, you know, a lot of the younger generations are being influenced by different cultures and stuff like that. So they might not take it as, seriously as the older generations, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, like how much of the influence is there from Western civilization and like what the effect is now with the younger generation on how, your ancestors do things. I just have one more question and I'll be quiet because I'll be here all day asking questions. I know, Vivette, when we were talking in the meeting prior to this, you spoke about spirits, and Ling, I know that you talked about the afterlife. So Rhonda, where do the dead go in your tribe or community?
We always believed in there was always one God, and different tribes will have their I'll be on a pole where the animals are literally eating you, so because you're going back to nature. Now it's against the law to practice that traditional ceremony to have your dead body in public. So things are changing on that, but I'm a Christian, and so it's very unique to have a Christian walking that path the Christian way, but also believing your ceremonies at the same time. But we always believe that there was always one God, and we're going to that one place. And so I still preach that gospel to everybody about our way that we can practice our ceremonies and still believe in God, believe in the Christian way. So I know a lot of people don't, but some people don't believe in that way of thinking. But my household and my family household believes in that way.
I'm going to add that, yeah, I have a Christian value that is really dominating anything. And maybe because I moved here and I have to struggle alone, and then I need to connect to something. But most of my siblings, they're more traditionalists. They believe that the dead are not really dead and that the spirit is roaming and you can talk to them. And it's funny as it sounds, my sister, who is part of that spiritual, she had that connection and she has been sitting. They say that many of generation of both my father's side and mother's side are truly spiritual, and they haven't possessed the gift of seeing past the future and the past and everything. So she's been telling me, though I talked to my grandfather from 4th generation, and she's in the process of initiation of doing that, and she's been getting the initiation. She's like, oh, I went to retrieve my great grandfather for like 4th generation. I was able to call his spirit and I spoke with him. And this is what he said. And I just have to believe her, but I'm not the one doing it. So, but all African will tell you that the dead are not dead. We are connected, even though we know that there's an existing of one God. That's why we should value and appreciate everything that we have. For example, my grandmother, when she was living, when to throw the water on the floor, you ask the spirit to close the eyes, not to harm them, to pick a mango on the tree to eat. You have to ask for forgiveness, before you eat them. You talk to birds, you talk to animals, even the food that you have to eat, you have to pray and thank them for feeding you, because it's not granted. They have some spirit in them, the living creature. It's not just you take everything for granted, but you have to know that in anything there's a value, there's the spirit, something that can be born, grow, and die. You have to value that maybe not the chair and the table, but everything that have life in it. You have to value it memorably. So the dead are not dead. They are with us.
Mhm.
Jamie, did you still want to say something?
I think some of it was touched upon in your question, but that was just so beautiful that the thought of the value of the spirit of every living thing and honoring that. So I wanted to comment on that. But my original question was for Rhonda about the, when we say Christian, I was gonna ask how much, influence in what's going on today or what's gone on, through generations was influenced, by Catholicism and the Catholic religion, and how is that shaped and morphed sort of the process today?
Oh, it has. I mean, when I first moved to, like I told my team here, when I first moved to the Cape and I went to a ceremony, somebody passed away, I'm over here dressed like I'm going to church. I mean, I had my heels on, I had my black on, and I'm the only one like that. And so, but then in my tribe, we're all Christianized, or the majority of the people is Christianized. And with my husband's tribe, they're anti-Christ, because what did the missionaries do to us? And then my grandfather always told us, when we was picking peas and doing our little field work in the summer, he said that was the best thing that the white, and I hate to, no offense, this is what he said. No, the best things that white men brought to us was the Bible. And so he was pretty much saying, don't look at what they did to us. Look at what the faith, look at what the word says. And so, and that's how I can, that's how I have to live my life, is through that. So I continue try it, and it is rough. It is, I can't express to you how hard it is to live two worlds at the same time.
I'm feeling compelled about your question too. And actually in Cameroon, in the Bamileke culture, there has been a big dilemma, because we have infused Catholicism into tradition in church. So we play like traditional instrument in the church and stuff. And recently, the Catholic Church have been trying to like talk down to the traditional, like the king and queens of Cameroon, and the king and queen told them that before you came with your Catholicism, we are already here. We decide from now on, you're going to stay in your church. We don't want you to any traditional funeral. We don't want you to any ceremony. We don't want any African traditional instrument to be played in your church. And when Pope John Paul II came to Cameroon, and he know that the Bamileke are one of the most influential people there, and he was the one who said, because they used to say, oh, if you're traditionally, you don't come to church. And they decide to mix them together. And now with that discussion going on, so the traditional king of Bamileke decided, no, the Catholic, you stay in your church and wait for your people to come to church. We're not using you anymore, and we don't want you to see you in our traditional ceremony. And that would be a loss, a financial loss for them. So that battle has been going on for about 2 months now. I'm going to see how the outcome turned out to be. But Catholicism had influence. So at the funeral, they would have a priest who would come and preach about life and death according to the Bible, and then the traditional come and do his part of the traditional. But since this new rule, they say, we don't want you anymore, stay at your church, and we'll figure out from there.
But I on the back to Native, the university, I mean, even when I was at school at Rutgers University, and even now, with mental health, they always say, when you're doing assessments, you have to watch out assessing natives, because we believe in dreams, and we believe in seeing things, and we can't be watch out about diagnosed with schizophrenia, because that might not be the right diagnosis. But it is in textbooks about watch out on ceremonies and understanding the culture of people, because they believe we yearn when somebody passed away. We yearn for those dreams to come to us, and it's the best feelings when our grandparents are coming to us. The people that we miss the most is coming back to us, and that'll, so we have the, in the dominant culture, people's educated not to diagnose us with the wrong diagnosis if they ever comes up.
Thank you. We have just a couple minutes left. I want to know if there's any burning questions that anybody has, you can type it in the chat. Oh, you know what I saw? Oh yeah, go ahead, Vivek.
I just wanted to make a last comment about the Catholicism and the tradition. The fact was that since the Bamileke was the most economic and fluent people in Africa, and they were getting a lot of loss in financially Catholic Church, that's why they decided to include the tradition to make them more appealing, because, you know, they say when you're polygamous, we know polygamous, right? They say, oh, you're not supposed to come to church if you're polygamous. And Catholic Church was losing a lot. And then they finally say, oh, let's mix them down. Catholicism was making a lot of money. And then that's why when they kind of put down those traditional authority and they say, oh, we don't want Catholicism, to just stay in your church and wait for the member who come. And if at the meeting and they say, the king say, oh, don't go, we still value our king, we value our tradition. And then they say, if they tell them don't go to church, those will be empty at the end of the day. And I would take an example just to really show how the impact of tradition can be. There was this specific man that I know who was just praying God, and he said, no, I'm putting tradition away. He got sick, he got paralyzed, he couldn't move. And they told him, as long as you go and remove the skull of your father, your grandfather, to put in the house, that's all you need to do to heal. And he was close to his death. He said, let me go. He couldn't then move. They carried his paralyzed body and helped him hold the machete. And they said, blink your eyes that you want to do that. As soon as he blinked the eye and started digging, he got up and he started walking. So that's why sometimes I'm scared. I'm like, okay, what do I fit? You know, I'm always like struggle with both, you know, like I want to pray God. And I have my spiritual father in a Christian who's like, oh, forget about that part. But I'm having my sister say, oh no, you having this because this is happening. This person come and visit you at night and feed you food. That's bad. The grandfather wants you to come and give salt and palm oil. So it's like, it's a big struggle. If you're trying to depart from that, it's a big struggle. So it's like, when do you win? But at the end of the day, we know that we honor one God. He's there, and there's no doubt about that.
Well, we are at noon, and one of the things that we talked about as a group as we were planning this is that just this conversation could be like a whole series, and then there's all the other points of life that we really would like to talk about further as well. So I hope that this kind of got everybody's minds working and, you know, really allow people to kind of reflect on what tradition means in your own life. Kind of that's kind of what the question that we're sitting with. And I hope we have more conversations like this to come, and that many people join. And if you have any questions, please reach out. If there's things you'd like to know, you know, hear about further, please reach out and we can maybe plan some more.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.